All right, welcome to tonight's workshop, guys. As I was putting together this workshop, getting everything prepared, getting everything honed out, you never know how things are really going to pull together, because I don't just take the same worn-out workshop that we did a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Every time that there's something coming up, I want to make sure we have the best, most relevant, the newest information that's out there. And I'm talking not just reading people's blogs online and stuff like that. I actually get in and I start looking at new research that's coming through PubMed and the national databases to see what is being done, what's been out there. And it shouldn't be a surprise to us, but it is astounding how, who was here for the deficiencies workshop? Was anybody in here at that last one? Okay, we got a number of you. And the deficiencies fulfilled workshop. Well, this actually ended up turning into an extension off of those workshops, because what we're finding as the new research comes out, and it shouldn't be a surprise, like I said, is that everything is tying together. I'm talking all the major diseases that everybody is dealing with, from chronic fatigue to cancer to diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ADHD, autism, all of them. They're all going back to the same things. And what you see is on the sides, on both sides, number one, the medical side is really just throwing out magic bullets at a diagnosis. It's a diagnosis, and so throw a drug at it, throw a drug. They're pretty much never on target with what the actual causes are. But even as we start seeing, the natural side isn't much better. You look at the things that we're going to cover tonight, and you see that most of the common treatments that it seems like, well, we're getting more at the cause, but even they're not really getting at the cause. So you're going to hopefully be putting together a lot of this stuff tonight and seeing the big picture start to unfold on where these things really root from. And I'm going to show you the key, basic, simple things that you just have to do, that most likely 90% of you in here, you already know what to do, because we've already told you, maybe even 3 or 7 years ago, but now you're going to know why. And even though we didn't necessarily have all the means and all the research to tell you why you needed to do these things, now it's all there. It's all starting to come together, and it's all making sense, but it's going back to the bare bone basics. So I was talking to somebody today, and it was like, it was basically like everybody out there is trying to get better and better at making half-court shots, and the reality is what's going to win the game is learning free throws. The most basic things is what all of this is coming back to. So, big fat lie, the new scientific understanding and approach to weight loss. Who's excited that tonight, even though we're talking about weight loss, there's only one line in the workshop about exercise? The whole workshop, there's only one line, okay? But it's a stern line, so don't be too excited about it. Okay, so here is the big fat lie. The big fat lie is that fat makes you fat. Okay, who in here has believed that at one time in your life, that fat makes you fat? If you're not raising your hand, you're lying, right? Because you sat down at a table and been like, well, I can't eat that because that's going to put a pound on somewhere, right? And so we make our choices, our dietary choices, based on fat content, because that's what we've been fed for so long, is that fat makes you fat. That the low fat craze, everything, all the packages, they say no fat, low fat, reduced fat, and everything else. Well, it really has very little, if anything, to do with fat. The fact is, eating fat does not lead to obesity. Eating fat does not lead to obesity directly, okay? It is the combination of toxic overload and the resulting inability to burn fat that leads to accumulation of fat for the purpose of, and this is remarkable, pay really close attention to this, for the purpose of intelligent self-preservation on behalf of the wisdom of innate intelligence. Somebody in here tell me what that means.
I don't have a slide.
I was waiting for that. Right. Okay, what that means is that you've got this innate wisdom inside of your body called innate intelligence. Every living thing has this innate intelligence, meaning that it's this inborn intelligence that you have from the day that you're born. You don't need to learn how to breathe. You don't need to learn how to have your heart beat. your brain doesn't need education, right? In fact, education sometimes does the opposite, right? It takes us further away from that innate wisdom that you might call nature, you might call nurture, you might call just automation. But the reality is that power is the greatest power that you have at your asset, right? It is the doctor within. It's the thing that keeps you alive and keeps you functioning every single day of your life. It even puts you to sleep for 8 hours a day so that it can go and do its thing without you interfering. So that innate intelligence is what actually causes the fat accumulation for the purpose of intelligent self-preservation. It is actually a function of your immune system in a sense. The accumulation of fat is your body protecting itself. Think about that for a second. That radically changes everything about the way that we think about it and the way that we've been taught. So tonight's workshop is really showing you all the ins and outs of how that works and why this is so important. Okay? So the skinny on weight loss. While water-soluble toxins are easily excreted, water-soluble means that, of course, the toxins absorb or they dilute in water, right? You guys know oil and water doesn't mix. Okay, so you have oil soluble and or fat soluble and water soluble. That happens in vitamins, that happens in minerals, that happens in chemicals. Different things dissolve in different components. So while water-soluble toxins are easily excreted or detoxified, when you think about the word detoxified, you're really talking about excretion. You're talking about getting it out of your system, right? So while they're easily detoxified via the blood, the kidneys, and other components, sweat, etc., fat-soluble toxins are not as readily dealt with, okay? Because they're not as common in nature. There's not as many built-in pathways because these things we weren't really developed to be able to deal with. These fat-soluble toxins are often man-made, hence no natural means of elimination, and include heavy metal products, pesticides, preservatives, food additives, pollutants, plastics, and other chemicals. Where do a lot of these things come from? They're petroleum-based, okay? Where is petroleum?
In the ground.
How deep? Was our body ever intended to be consuming petroleum?
No.
Obviously not. No more than a cow is supposed to eat corn, right? You ever seen a cow shuck corn? No. So we're not. Hopefully not.
Okay, you go.
But they draw on billboards, so they got to be able to shuck corn, right? So these things we were never supposed to consume them. Yet we're getting them included into our systems all the time. So with no natural means of being able to get this stuff out, it has to go somewhere, right? So all of these are lipophilic, which means they have an affinity to fat. Affinity means that they like fat, they bind to fat. So where do they go? They go to the liver. Has anybody heard of a fatty liver? Okay, the liver is a high-fat organ. When it gets stressed, that fat accumulates. For example, in alcoholism. It goes to the blood. It goes to adipose, or fat tissue, primarily white fat tissue, which is what most people deal with. There's two different kinds of fat. There's white fat and brown fat. Brown fat is typically when you're a baby. It's fast-burning fat. It's a totally different. We won't even get into that. Your brain, what is your brain composed of? Fat. What happens to anorexics? They go crazy, right? Because when their bodies starve of fat, what do they start eating? Their brain. Yeah, their brain literally starts to deteriorate and it starts self-consuming itself. And their nerve system. Your nerve system is also composed entirely of fat. Okay? So these lipophilic toxins, they have to go somewhere, so they go towards fat. Well, does your body want them going to your liver?
No.
Well, it's going to go to your liver first because the liver is the organ that tries to detoxify things. Well, when it can't do anything with it, it's got to go somewhere else. So it goes into the blood. And then when it goes into the blood, what's the next place to go? Either the nerve system or fat. So knowing that innate intelligence is behind the scenes and it wants to maintain itself and preserve itself, it's going to do anything possible to keep the toxins out of the brain and the nerve system. So what does it do? It creates storage depots. and it starts packing it away in the accessories so that it cannot affect the brain and the nerve system. And then we complain, right, why can't we get rid of it? Well, knowing that, do you really want to see it go off your butt now? Right? Think about it, because if it does, where does it go? It goes to your brain and your spinal cord. So you don't want it leaving there until you have a means of proper detoxification. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay? there's an end to the means, right? Okay. Anatomy and physiology. This is the exciting stuff. I know you guys love the anatomy. Okay, this is how everything is laid out. This is the big picture. You know, you can see everybody knows where your small intestine is and the colon that wraps around. You got your pancreas sitting up above it. You got your liver sitting up higher than that. Your gallbladder. Okay, so bile is secreted by the liver. Okay, so your liver does all kinds of. This is one of the most important organs in your entire body, second to the brain. It processes everything that goes through your body. This is. It's unbelievable how important the liver is to overall function. So it produces bile, and the bile travels down, and it comes down this duct here where it gets dumped into the small intestine. Okay, bile is a salt. Bile salts, right? And what they're designed to do is emulsify fats so that you can then digest the fats. And then, of course, you got your pancreas, that it produces all the enzymes that break down protein, that break down carbohydrates. So you've got the proteins covered, you've got carbohydrates covered, you've got fats covered, right? Well, in case of high fat consumption, your liver is constantly producing salts, but it goes and it dumps that bile into the gallbladder for storage.
Suppose you don't have a gallbladder.
Jump ahead, she's jumping. So, yes, this is wild, right? So your gallbladder is supposed to store all of that so that now you go out to the steakhouse and you eat an obscene amount of steak, right? Which the average person needs about 6 ounces of protein per day. 6 to 8 ounces of protein per day. I didn't say meal. Did anybody notice that a 6-ounce steak is rarely seen on the menu? Okay? Who orders the 8-ounce steak, right? That's like this little medallion filet, right? It's $27. You know, nobody orders the small one. They all want the 10-ounce, the 12-ounce, the 16-ounce, the 24-ounce, right? These massive, massive steaks. Well, you consume all that fat, and you've got, imagine, this little trickle of bile salts coming from the liver on a constant stream, dumping out. Little trickle. Is it going to be able to handle the steak? No. So what does your gallbladder do? Your gallbladder is sitting up there, and it's like emergency, you know, and it squeezes all that stuff down into your gut so that it can start emulsifying all these fats that you just dumped in there. Okay. So now, when you stress out that system by doing it over and over and over and over again, do you see why your gallbladder goes bad? Why it gets sludgy? Okay. So people go and they get their gallbladder taken out because, come on, you don't need a gallbladder. That's a what do they say? A residual organ. That's one of those things that evolutionarily you just didn't need. You know, so it's a leftover piece. Baloney. Think about it. You know, it's not leftover. You have to have it there to be able to produce lots of bile salts when needed at the right time. If you don't have it there, you better not eat fats. And if you do eat fats, you'd better be taking bile salts. Ox bile, right? Some form of emulsification product, right? Everybody that has a gallbladder, they're like, what? Now I'm finding this out? Yeah, so you're not digesting fats properly. You're not digesting fats. They're just going straight through. Okay? That creates a whole host of other problems here. But see, when dumped, so it emulsifies fats, both toxic and natural. So that's the gallbladder's job, that's the liver's job, is to emulsify these fats so that you can now absorb them. And it doesn't know how to differentiate between good fats and bad fats. There's got to be a plan for that, right? Of course there is. Okay? That's where GALT comes in. Gut-associated lymphoid tissue. Okay? This component of the small intestine is meant to differentiate between helpful and harmful fats. Okay, so basically the way that you see it set up, you've got the intestines, right? You zoom in a little bit better here. Okay, now this is the intestinal wall here. You've got these lumen. If you look in even closer, you've got these big villi, these big fingers. And then you look even tinier than that, you've got these little mini fingers on top of the big fingers. Right? It's this elaborate, huge surface area network. Okay, when you take all those things and you expand it out, the surface area is immense that you have for digestion and absorption of nutrients. It's unreal. But what happens when you're not digesting fats properly, you're getting toxic fats, these little microvilli, what do you think they do? They start clumping together. They start all getting all gooed up and they clump together. I mean, these are tiny, tiny little fragment hair-like structures, tiny, microscopic, and you're throwing sludge on top of them, motor oil, literally. And so they get all clumped together, they don't work, and then what happens is the gut-associated lymphoid tissue can't do its job to differentiate between good fats, bad fats, whatever, and then you end up, as the problem continues, it gets worse. It causes leaky gut syndrome where now you have breaks in this system and it allows proteins and everything else and bacteria to pass through the intestinal wall. That goes directly into the bloodstream via these blood vessels and veins here. And then you see you've got a whole mess of a problem. That causes all these different digestion problems that we see today. Okay? So, this is what happens. Anybody eating right now? This is called mucoid plaque. Okay? Intestinal plaque. This is the slide that's going to change somebody in here tonight. Right? Somebody in here tonight
It's got a parasite in it.
is changing everything. So intestinal plaque is most often caused by chronic ingestion of indigestible toxic fats such as from pork, vegetable oil, canola oil, and anything else that causes mucus release in the intestines. That includes all the motor oil, petroleum-based products. Anything that gets into your system that is an indigestible oil, it causes mucus to be released in your intestines to try and protect itself and push that junk away from the intestinal villi. Okay? So then what happens is as it produces that mucus, that's only supposed to be a short process. So the idea is, you're running around the woods, right, and you shoot something, you eat something that is bad, and your body sees it, it notices that it's a toxic material, like maybe it's dead flesh, like you thought something was recently killed, but it was actually killed 8 days ago, and so your body sees it, and it immediately creates an immune response to it, starts producing massive amounts of mucus to eject that stuff and sling it out the other end, right? Okay? You guys getting the picture?
Yeah.
Making sure. Okay. So you build up this mucus, but it's supposed to be short-lived. It's supposed to happen, then be over. And then you go back to eating good, fresh vegetables and everything else, right? What happens when you do it all the time? You keep producing mucus, on top of mucus, on top of mucus, on top of mucus. And pretty soon, that's what happens to the mucus. It starts to harden. It starts to turn into literally rubber inside of your intestines. It starts caking onto the intestinal walls. And so what happens to that big miraculous network of intestinal lumen that has this huge surface area? Well, that surface area is gone now because it's covered and smothered in mucoid plaque. Okay, where does this come from? These pictures? These come from people doing intestinal cleanses. It's people doing enemas, where you plastic tube, you run some coffee through, you massage your stomach, and then bear down. And that's what comes out. People fill 5-gallon buckets full of this stuff in the matter of a few days. Okay? So, not a pretty sight, right? So what's the next question? How do you know if that's you? Right? How do you know if this is you? Some of you are laughing, some of you are dead serious. You're like, do I really want to know? Do I really want to know? Okay. Here's how you know. Symptoms of improper gut function and elimination include constipation and the opposite, loose stools. It can be either. But if you see systemic occurrences of this, it happens regularly, then you're probably in that category. Loose stools, extra weight around the belly. This is the telltale sign, okay? I want you to think about this for a second, because this really isn't hard to figure out when you just stop and think about it. Okay, you see this guy's arms? Okay? They're not that big, right? But then you see this, that's pretty big. You go up and you poke this guy in the belly, what do you feel? It's pretty hard, okay? Now, let's do some anatomy review. What's in there? No, anatomy review, yes. but what's in there? Organ-wise, what's in there? Intestines, stomach, that's it. It's just intestines. So, what could possibly be bloated so much?
There's a baby.
Intestines, yeah, there's no baby in there, you hope, right? So, it does. So, it's got to be intestines, and the intestines are the only thing that can really be expanding out that far. And the reason why is because, you see, he's got a 5-gallon bucket full of mucus stuck in there. Okay? People like this, they can literally lose 30, 40 pounds in a matter of a week just from mucus congestion. Imagine how that would make you feel. Not coming out, but afterwards. Right? I mean, you would feel miraculously better once you get all that stuff out and you actually are able to assimilate nutrients
Is
again.
that called detoxification?
You could call it that. You could also call it giving birth. Yeah, that's one way or another. The stuff has got to come out because this guy isn't digesting food. This is the guy at public restrooms nobody wants to follow, right? I mean, they're just not digesting anything. Everything goes through rancid all the time. And so you see how nutritional deficiencies set up, right? This is how it all starts tying together. The nutritional deficiencies end up happening because you can't pull out of the food that you are consuming. And when the food itself is deficient, you're really not pulling out. So this is just walking straight towards chronic disease over and over and over again. Okay? Other ones, bloating, rash, itching, swollen limbs, breast swelling or tenderness on cycle, allergies, headaches, and more. All these things are telltale signs that you've got intestinal dysfunction. And there's doctors throughout history that are under the belief that the intestinal system is really the key to health. I mean, a lot of these guys, Weston Price, Royal Lee, these great doctors, they thought it was all about digestion. That how you assimilate nutrients means the world. Now, of course, we have a slightly different philosophy because digestion wouldn't know what it's doing without the brain and nerve system. But nonetheless, you can't live one without the other. So you got to look at the big picture altogether. Okay, so connect the dots. The increasing common finding of gluten. Who in here has heard gluten intolerance? It's everywhere right now, right? Gluten intolerance, lactose intolerance, which you don't hear as much anymore. Gluten seems to be the rave now, right? These follow the same exact causal pathway as they produce excess amounts of mucus in many individuals. So these particular foods, the reason they're targets is because they're mucus producing. So when you eat them, they produce a mucus response and it aggravates this same pathway. But it's the same thing. It's just those are just one aggravator of the problem. They're not the problem. They're just an aggravator of the problem. Does that make sense? Okay? So you got to go backwards. You see, I tell people this all the time. Why is it that, you say you're glucose intolerant, or glucose, I hope you're not glucose intolerant. You say that you're gluten intolerant, but why can you not eat it, but I can? What's different about you than me? Why, and what you get to is, you see real quick, hopefully that thought makes you see, it can't be the gluten. because we're eating the same thing and yet we're having a different response, right? So it's not the food, it's got to be something backwards from that, right? See what I mean? I mean, if you were to take a gun and we shoot both of us with it, we can say the gun is the problem because we're both going to have the same response. Safe to say? Okay? But it's a different picture when you're looking at food because they're going to be different responses. So it can't be that. It's got to be something further down. This is the connection point. This is where the problem lies. It's just a means to create the mucus. Lactose does the same thing. Okay? So if the underlying problem is already there, these foods just trigger it more easily than other foods. That's why they've become the target of all the hype lately. Okay? So how gluten contributes to thyroid disease is just a random picture that I found online. You know, they come up, it's amazing all the stuff that's coming out on this. But you start looking at these things, and I want you to go back, watch the deficiencies workshop, watch the deficiencies fulfilled workshop, listen to everything here, and then look at all of these and tie it all together yourself, okay? We've got protein deficiency, because you can't assimilate proteins, you can't digest them. You've got autoimmune dysfunction, which we'll see as we go further on. Leaky gut syndrome, we already talked about that. Magnesium deficiency, that was in the last workshop. Vitamin A and vitamin D deficiency, those are fat-soluble vitamins, so you're not going to be assimilating those properly. And iodine deficiency, right? It's all the same stuff. It just all correlates together. This is one giant puzzle. Okay? Candida albicans. Who in here has gone to a health food store and said, oh, you've got yeast? Somebody in here. No?
I've done the spit test.
Yeast. Well, nobody would. Never mind. Nobody's going to raise our hand for that. Right?
She said I had cancer.
I didn't think about that before I said it. Yeah. Me.
I want to know what you're drinking there. What you fixing to drink? Tell me.
This is coffee.
Regular coffee?
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
Yeah. Would you like some?
No, I like some cheese if you don't mind.
You want what?
Cheese.
Some cheese. Cheese and coffee. I've never tried that before.
No. You told me cheese wasn't good for me.
Yeah.
That's the reason I told you I wanted some cheese.
I said
didn't
conventional cheese isn't good
I
for you.
did not know that you drank regular coffee.
Oh, of course. I own a
I
coffee
bet it's
shop.
organic.
I
Yeah.
know. That's what I'm talking about. He owned a coffee shop over there.
I'm actually glad you made that point, and you know what? I prepared for that because I knew somebody in here was going to say that at some time. But I thought it was actually going to come later. Is what about coffee depleting nutrients? So I'll tell you what, because that's not going to make a lot of sense right now. Hold that thought. Somebody remind me when we get to that part. Deal?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm gonna cover that because I looked and I looked and I looked. Candida albicans overgrowth, which is commonly known as yeast, is commonly described as leaky gut syndrome. When you read all the articles and you look at all the information that's out there, basically where this all stems back to is a leaky gut syndrome problem where you're starting to get stuff into your system and then yeast pours into your system. It gets into your bloodstream and it starts going out into your tissues and multiplying and wreaking havoc all over the place. Okay? So, most often attempts to cure involve probiotics or other means of killing the yeast, right? That's where typically the treatments go. But this, of course, is inadequate when you understand the real underlying problem of why is the yeast allowing to grow and why is it passing through the intestinal wall in the first place? How is it actually getting through the intestinal wall? It all backs up to the original problem, right? So we gotta, even when you get the yeast thing, you gotta step back and say, well, what allowed that to occur? There's a more systemic problem in place. So how do you know if you have a candida overgrowth? Fatigue, chronic fatigue is a telltale sign. That's one of the biggest things that people see. You walk into a health food store and you say, I'm chronically tired. Yeast, I mean, you're slapped that right away, right?
Stomach?
Easy diagnosis. Huh?
Stomach.
Stomach. Itchy, burning eyes, mouth ulcers, itchy skin and rashes, genital itching, white-coated tongue, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea. One of the tests that you can do for yeast overgrowth because of the white-coated tongue, what will happen with that is if you spit into a glass, the white precipitate will actually fall down into the bottom of the glass. You'll actually see it like strings in there, so you can try that in the morning. Neat little science project, right, to see if you have yeast. But this is, you see, is just another problem with the previous association. Okay, here's another one. Acid reflux is often described as too much acid, hence prescribing of antacids. Okay, now think about the thought process there. Too much acid. If you've ever been diagnosed with this and you've been given antacids, think about the insanity of that for a second. Too much acid. What do you need to digest food? Acid. So how can you have too much acid? Okay, it just doesn't make sense. What's happening, even if you do really have too much acid, that should still make you back up and say, well, why do I have too much acid, doc? Right? Because obviously you're not digesting food properly. Well, why would you not be digesting food properly? Because the system is stressed. And so you're not getting food to process correctly. It doesn't go through the pipes properly. So this is the equivalent of claiming a clogged toilet as a result of too much water. Think about it for a second. You know, you see the water boiling up, oh, we got to turn the water off. You do that, what happens? Your house is going to stink, right? Because you can't flush anymore. So that's the same thing that occurs. You start taking antacids, you make the problem worse because now it's going to come out the other end undigested because you're not able to break things down properly. So we got to back it up. Okay, antacids are not going to solve the problem. In fact, they cause your jaw to fall apart, right? Now all the research is showing that it causes jaw and bone necrosis. It means death of your bones, right? And chiropractors really don't like that. Okay, so connect the dots even further. When the liver becomes overwhelmed, it pushes toxins into the bloodstream. So the liver consumes all these toxins as they're getting shuttled in there from the intestines. As they pass through, the liver doesn't like what it sees, but it gets overwhelmed. It can't do anything with it, so it starts dumping over now into the bloodstream. So the bloodstream then delivers it to two places, the fat cells and the brain. And so now we see that in brain and nerve system conditions such as ADD, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. All these connections are being made. You see right now all over the news that they're seeing diabetes and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are basically the same thing, right? You can see now why they're all the same thing. The research is going to keep on just diving all this stuff in until we figure out the grand culmination that we're going to go through at the finality of tonight's workshop. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple of studies in here. This is from PubMed. This is a national database of research. All the research articles that come out and are published go into this national database. So this one, concentrations of dioxins and other organochlorines, PCBs, DDTs, HCHs, and human milk from Espresso, Milan, blah, 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 right? Okay, so here's the point of it. 25 years, the conclusion down here is that 25 years after the dioxin catastrophe, by the way, dioxin is a very, very, very potent toxin. Okay, if you remember, there were, I don't remember how long ago, it was a few years back, there was a head official, a president or whatever of one of the European countries that got poisoned, and he, like, half of his face got, like, melted off. They were trying to assassinate him. Yeah, that was dioxin. Okay? If dioxin is most often found in cow's milk around here, and it's because of the way that it's processed and what the cows are consuming. And the EPA sets a limit of dioxin, yet studies have shown that if you pull any regular carton of milk off of a shelf, its dioxin level is beyond the limit. So they don't really regulate it. They set the limit, but they don't really regulate it. This stuff is absolutely poisonous. Okay? 25 years after the dioxin catastrophe, human milk from mothers in Espresso had concentrations of the highly toxic dioxin that are more than twice as high as those in central Milan and a Lombardian village. So where they had this catastrophe 25 years earlier, they still have twice the amount that other people have. So the conclusion is deadly dioxins were found to be stored in fat cells for 25 years and released during lactation. 25 years. So your body is very effective at storing away toxins that it can't deal with. That's why it hangs on for 25 years, right? It's like we can't make it go away, and I can't, no matter how much I exercise, it just keeps on coming back, and it just stays there, and I can't get it off of these different places. You know, people lose about 10 to 15 pounds, you know, something like that, and then they just plateau. This is why. Their body will not let it go if it knows it can't put it anywhere. Okay? Tired bodies, this is a zinc copper balance. This is kind of the cornerstone. This is really the meat of tonight's workshop, is this very critical component, the zinc and copper balance. Who in here remembers that previous workshops, like the deficiencies workshop, talking about copper toxicity? Okay? This is how it all works. Okay? Tired bodies with overactive minds, who would say you're in that category? Okay, a lot of people, right? So this is the signature of copper-zinc imbalance, according to Anne-Louise Gittleman. She's a PhD and author who is really just pushing through all the research on this and understanding how all this works. It's zinc and copper are both necessary in your body. You need these trace elements, but zinc should actually be a higher amount. Copper should be just a very, very minimal amount. Okay, but what happens, as we'll go through, is that that proportion gets completely out of balance. Okay, when the diet is lacking in zinc and protein, however, and in fats to promote bile production, use of high copper foods and environmental copper, primarily ingested through our water. Why?
Pipes.
Pipes. Very good. Yeah, we talked about that before. Promote buildup of copper in our tissues. So we get too much copper into our tissues, and when we have that immediate deficiency of zinc, because we're not getting in our food, which you can probably start thinking, why aren't we getting zinc in our food? And probably already starting to come up with the ideas here. Okay? Then you end up with this reversal in the problem. The late Carl C. Pfeiffer, PhD, MD, formerly of the Brain Biocenter in Princeton, New Jersey, has provided us with the most comprehensive overview of nutritional problems associated with copper and zinc in his classic study, Mental and Elemental Nutrients. As he succinctly puts it, deficiency of zinc accentuates copper excess. So when you're deficient in zinc, you will ultimately end up with a copper toxicity. So this is very critical, all these different components. So now in your bag, you've got a quiz. Okay, this is actually her quiz, Dr. Dillman. And so it goes through all the different questions to understand if you are most likely out of sync. Does everybody have a packet? You don't? Can we get it? Do we have a couple extra packets? Okay, we have one. We'll make more. Okay. So this isn't necessarily something you have to do right now. And for the sake of time, I'm actually going to let you guys do this at home. I was going to go through it here, but it would take, half an hour or more to go through it here. So it'd just be a lot more efficient to let you guys do it at home. So read through this questionnaire and answer yes. And here's the idea. If you answer yes to 3 or more questions in the quiz, some degree of copper overload is likely present. Okay? Now, this is likely present. This is not a definite. How do you know a definite? You've got a test. Usually blood tests, things like that. Those will give you more definites. But read through this and take some time to do it. I'm going to ask you not to do it right now, even though it's very tempting, simply because you guys want to make sure you're not missing anything. But don't forget to do it either. Okay? Zinc galvanized pipes. Who was around when they used zinc galvanized pipes? A few of you. Okay.
Had to take them all out.
You remember? Okay, you had to take them all out. Why'd you have to take them all out?
Because they banned it.
Because what?
The Department of Health banned
Because they
it.
made you. They banned them.
They made me take them out. And cut my water off if I didn't.
So government mandate says you must take out the zinc galvanized pipes. Okay? Why? Because, of course, the zinc galvanized pipes only had a 70-year life expectancy.
That means I'm over 70.
Yeah. Now,
You have your pipes.
so think about it. The average life expectancy is 70. I'm just saying, do you think it's really that big a deal that every one of us should have to change our pipes in our home one time in our lifetime? Maybe twice. right? It's not that big a deal, right? I mean, we buy new cars, we buy new homes, we pay for kids, we pay for a bunch of stuff that we don't need, vacations and everything else, yet the government wants to protect us and make sure that we don't have to change our pipes once in our lifetime.
I thought
Yeah,
it
it
was
seems
just
a little
because they
odd,
came up
right?
with something better.
It seems a little odd.
Yeah.
Well, we have the solution. We're going to, after World War II, we're going to go in favor of copper pipes, right? Because copper pipes, they don't have the problems of corrosion that zinc pipes do after 70 years. You know, but how many of you have ever had a copper pipe mess up? Pretty much everybody, right? We have when we put in our copper pipes next door, we had leaks 3 times that we had to open up the walls, and it's probably not going to be the last time. So, you know, they still have problems. So the problem isn't necessarily the pipe; it's probably what's going through it, right?
Yeah.
And so what they found is that the reason why the pipes were corroding is because when you put through slightly acidic water, that's what happens. But if the water is pH balanced, it don't really corrode as much. So, simple problem, you just fix the water that's going through the pipes and you'd be okay. So according to the EPA, the maximum contaminant level is 1.3 milligrams per liter. Okay? Now, if you consume the recommended amount of water per day, let's say you're just a average income family who drinks nothing but tap water, okay? Would you say most people probably drink 1.3 or 1 liter of water a day? You're supposed to, right?
No,
You're supposed to drink about that much, okay? Whether they say 8 cups a day, you know, something like that. How much is a liter in cups? Isn't that 4 cups? Is it 4 cups? No, 4 cups is a quart. I think it's 8 cups is a liter. So you're supposed to drink 1 liter a day, which means you're automatically getting 1.3 milligrams per liter according to the EPA. That's what you should get. And most contaminant levels, I looked at our city water, for example, in preparation, and it says 0.3 is actually in the water already. 0.3 milligrams per liter. But that does not include what you're actually getting through the pipes. And we know that the pipes do corrode off, and they do leach into the water over time. So you're getting an unknown amount of water of copper in your exposure every time you take a shower, every time you drink water out of the tap, every time you do anything from the pipes coming into your house, you're getting that exposure. And if it's hot water, of course, it's gonna pull through faster. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is now. Somebody fell down over there. This is now the #1 exposure of ingested copper, which is now targeted and known as the cause of Alzheimer's. The probable cause of Alzheimer's. In fact, the tissues in the brain are a reaction to copper. The amyloid tissues in the brain is a reaction to copper. So we know this is the #1 exposure of ingested copper. The #2 source is vitamins and supplements. Look at that.
Wow.
Go home. So this is this is a task to do if you guys are the ones who go home and shop online for your vitamins, to find something comparable, because it's cheaper. Go home and look. If we know what we have in the products here. We make sure that the copper levels are low or non-existent. We've even gotten rid of products because they don't have, because they had too much copper in them. But go home and look. And a lot of them have 2 milligrams to 5 milligrams per serving of copper in them. And yet the EPA says that the contaminant level is 1.3, that you should not be getting more than that, right? So you can see how much this is going to start accumulating in your system. Now cap that off with a zinc deficiency on top of it, and you can see how you're backwards. Make sense? Okay? So, zinc appears to have a direct influence on the production of leptin. Who in here knows what leptin is? What's leptin?
It works with the insulin levels in your body.
Very good. And what is leptin coined as in the medical community? What do they know leptin controls most? Weight loss, fat production, right? Leptin is the fat hormone. Basically, that's everybody. See, they did a study, or they started making attempts a while back to create drugs that would alter leptin levels, and it was a mass failure. You know, the rats ended up in the studies, just blowing up gigantic because they had it all wrong. So if they could come up with a drug that actually affected leptin levels correctly, it would be blockbuster, right? I mean, they'd sell billions of dollars worth of it. So everybody's looking at how can they fix this little problem. So leptin is really the key. This is the hormone well known for its role in the fat burning for energy specifically. So you look at the studies. This was in 1998. Zinc restriction decreased leptin levels, while zinc supplementation of zinc depleted subjects increasing circulating leptin levels. So there's a direct relationship there. This one is in 2014. Effect of zinc supplementation on serum zinc and leptin levels, BMI, and body composition. And after adjusting for age, BMI, and body fat percentage, serum zinc and dietary zinc intake, a negative and significant association was observed between serum zinc and leptin levels in all subjects as a result of zinc supplementation. So we know that there is a very direct correlation between zinc and the hormone that controls fat burning for energy. You see how that works? Okay. I'm going to stop right here and say, don't anybody go home right now and just go straight to Walmart and they're buying the biggest bottle of zinc, cheap zinc supplement that they can find, right? Don't do that. Okay, listen and make sure that you've got all this so that you're going about it safely. Zinc deficiency increases leptin production and also causes immune dysregulation in obesity. So, this one was in 2012, another very recent study. An interaction among cellular immunity, leptin and zinc is inevitable. There are complex relations among food intake, leptin and zinc on one hand, and among cellular immunity, leptin and zinc on the other. Okay, this one here was in 2013, last year. Our results demonstrate that zinc deficiency increases leptin production and exacerbates macrophage infiltration into adipose tissue in obese mice, indicating the importance of zinc in metabolic and immune dysregulation in obesity. So, we know there is a very, very direct relationship between leptin and zinc, and now immune function as well. Okay, they all tie hand in hand. What do you know about people that are obese? They have immune dysfunction. Okay, it all ties together. You're more susceptible to what when you're obese? Cancer. What is cancer? Mass immune dysregulation. You see? It's all same picture. Okay, thyroid function. What do we talk about big time in the deficiencies workshop? Thyroid function, iodine deficiencies. So thyroid function correlated with zinc metabolism by affecting both its absorption and excretion, while in reverse, zinc deficiency affects thyroid function. So they work hand in hand both ways. It's a two-way street. This one was in 2010. There was significant correlation of serum zinc levels with thyroid volume in nodular goiter patients with thyroid autoantibodies in autoimmune thyroid disease, and with free T3 in patients with normal thyroid. So it doesn't matter if you're diseased or healthy, there's a direct correlation in the research. So we know zinc is intimately involved with thyroid function as well. Okay, there are correlations between zinc deficiency and iodine deficiency when considering the thyroid. Again, you got to go back and read and watch the deficiencies workshop. Make sure that you understand all the information in there because it all ties together. So this was in human thyroid gland under iodine deficient nodular goiter. So when people get goiters because of iodine deficiency, severe iodine deficiency, if you guys weren't at that workshop, the government set levels of iodine are just enough to keep you from having visible goiters. But yet most people are running around completely deficient in iodine. Completely deficient. Like every other organ in your body is starved for that essential nutrient, while your thyroid has just enough to function. just enough to do what it's supposed to do, and oftentimes not enough. How many people do you know that have thyroid dysfunction? It's because it's starving for iodine. Okay? So the result, elevated copper and decreased zinc concentration they found in the thyroid tissue as a result of the iodine deficiency. So we see this.
What other food do you have it posted besides salt?
Iodine.
Yeah.
All that information is in the deficiencies workshop, but it used to be in every bread product that was made. Okay, what do they do with it? They eliminated iodine from bread and started brominating bread instead. Okay, what does bromine do? It antagonizes absorption of iodine. It keeps you from absorbing it, and yet that was switched and mandated that all bread contain bromine instead of iodine.
Approved by the health department of them.
Yes. Okay. And it goes deeper than that. You know, cows, they used to graze on grass where they got iodine. Now what do they eat? Corn. No iodine. None of these essential nutrients. Okay. Zinc appears to play a very critical role in the use of essential fatty acids. We talked about those in the deficiencies workshop. Review of the information in the deficiency workshop should be considered on this point. There is substantial evidence. This was in 1980. This is not new stuff. There is substantial evidence to suggest that anorexia nervosa is due to a combined deficiency of zinc and essential fatty acids. So your brain doesn't have the essential fatty acids needed to repair itself, and the whole problem is promulgated because of zinc and copper imbalances. Okay? Zinc therapy is effective. This was in 2011. Zinc therapy is effective at lowering copper levels in autistic children with GI disease. You see that autistic kids usually have gastrointestinal dysfunction, right? They have bowel issues. They have tons of food sensitivities. They're gluten intolerant and everything else. Okay, so again, zinc therapy is effective at lowering copper levels, which you see that copper levels are almost always high. They're elevated in autistic kids when you do blood tests. Their copper levels are always jacked up. So the zinc therapy will lower that in the kids and actually help them improve, which of course is, so these results suggest an association between zinc and copper plasma levels in autism. Okay, more connections to industrialization. Corn has a high demand for zinc relative to other crops and is the most likely crop to show deficiency characterized by white striping on the leaves. So what you thought corn was supposed to look like, green leaves with white stripes on it and brown edges, that's not what corn is supposed to look like. That is zinc deficient corn. Yet, anytime I've ever seen corn in the stores that's still on the stalks and everything, they're not bright green leaves. They look like this. Right? Have you guys seen the same thing? That's because the zinc is starving. If you go home and you Google zinc deficiency corn, you will find that in almost every state, the agriculture departments and major universities are studying this and pushing people to put zinc into, to use zinc fertilizers. They're pushing and pushing and pushing to use it. But, of course, you look at that problem. Now, let's step back. Why would we need to be talking about that? Why are they talking about it? Because they notice it's a huge problem. They see that all the crops are diseased and they're getting worse and worse and worse as they deplete all the organic matter out of the soil. They're getting more zinc starved. Okay, so the universities are picking up on it, which means they're promoting the data. But what has to happen still? They still have to get the farmers to agree to now dump zinc fertilizer on top of all their crops. Well, if it's still pushing out corn and the government's still buying the corn, do they care about the zinc fertilizer? No. A corn cob is a corn cob. If it's worth 20 cents, it's worth 20 cents, whether it's got zinc in it or not. They don't care. It's industrialization. Okay? So, we probably shouldn't be relying on corn as the base of our food chain. Yet it is, right? Corn is in everything. It's in most of the meats that we're eating. So what do we do with all this stuff? Number one, if you want to, you can blood test for it. You can do I gave you the survey. You can look at that and you can see there and you can start to work on balancing it that way. If you want to go more aggressive, you can do the blood testing. Unfortunately, the blood testing is a little bit expensive. A nutrient and toxic elements test is $338. We can do all these tests if you really want to do them. They're not the things that we push on people, but this looks at calcium levels, copper, magnesium, potassium, selenium, vanadium, and zinc, as well as the toxic metals, aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. Okay, I actually did that test a good long time ago. This one here, this is a toxic effects test. This looks at all the pesticides and all the chemicals that are in your set. This is basically a body burden test. So it's chlorinated pesticides and PCB profile. This one is $608. But if you look at the individual ones, it's actually not a bad deal. Just a chlorinated pesticides profile alone, which looks here, this is $382. Why would you need that? It says right here, chlorinated pesticides have been used in agriculture worldwide since World War II. That's a long time ago, right? So you've been exposed to these since World War II, dumped annually. They're always being dumped out there every single year, over and over and over again. They have also been used as insecticides to exterminate mosquitoes, termites, and fire ants. Now mostly banned in the United States, contaminated soil and groundwater are major routes of exposure and affect the nervous system first. Infants are exposed through breastfeeding of the chlorinated pesticides. DDT is the most well known. Who was around in the days of DDT, right? A lot of us, okay? Polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs. PCBs were used as lubricants and coolants in transformers, capacitors, and electronic equipment because of a high resistance to heat until they were banned in the late 1970s. Due to the stability of PCBs, they do not break down in the environment and increase in the fatty tissues of both animals and humans. PCBs travel up the food chain in fish, fatty meats, and dairy products. Infants are exposed through breastfeeding. Okay? Both of these tests individually are $382, and then the volatile solvents are used in the manufacture of many consumer products such as glues, adhesives, paints and paint thinners, furniture, binding materials, shoes. Exposure to volatile solvents is usually through inhalation of fumes or ingestion of polluted water. So you see, these things are everywhere. Everywhere you go, you're contaminated by these unnatural chemicals that are the very top of the paradigm of this whole thing. They're the things that are causing the mass breakdown of the whole intestinal process. Okay, so you can do the blood testing. Another thing is the zinc challenge test. Although this test is somewhat subjective, it can be an easy and inexpensive way to detect at least severe zinc deficiencies. So what I was going to do, if anybody that's interested tonight, I don't know how many bottles we have of the zinc challenge, but if anybody wants to do it, and we've got, do you mind administering some zinc in bottles, and you guys can all run up there and do it. We'll do it pro bono. But that's only for people here tonight, just in case you guys are watching on YouTube. We're not going to send you a bottle. So you guys can go ahead and do the zinc challenge tonight at no cost and see if, see at least, it's a subjective measure, so that's the problem with it, is some people have more susceptibility to taste than others. So, some of you might be borderline like, well, I really can't tell if it is or not or whatever. But for a few of you, you might take it and it's immediate. One way or the other what it is. So, we'll be glad to let you do that real quick and just see. So, what you've learned tonight. Here's kind of the putting all of this together. It seemed to go really fast tonight, didn't it?
No.
No.
You know what I have. You know I have ADD, so.
Oh.
Mine is not. Dr. Mike, it's AAADD. It's age activated. The older I get, the worse.
Age activated. All right. So, Ruby, you must change your diet.
It has nothing to do with it.
Okay. The The easy way is following our aggressive diet plan. Because, see, all of this stuff is already in that diet plan. It's already worked in there. Every detail of it, it's already in place. The hard way would be what? You go and figure out why. You go and you research and you study and you learn all this stuff yourself. So, I mean, if you got the time, trust me, I am not against, Ruby, you going and educating yourself on this stuff. I'm not against it, right? I want you guys to be as educated as possible because education is empowerment if done in the right way. But you can make it easier on yourself and more immediate by just jumping on it and just doing it, right? So just do the plan. Number 2, you must eliminate environmental toxic burden. Okay, you guys all remember doing that nutrition and detox questionnaire and on that visit where we go through all that stuff. Remember us asking you all those questions, like, and we ask them repeatedly. Have you changed out all your toxic home care products? Have you changed out all your toxic food products? You know, all these questions that we repeatedly ask and we repeatedly get no's on. This is why. Okay? It's all there. It all goes back to the same thing because these are the breakdown methods. That if you just clean out lifestyle and get back to raw, natural basics, you do better. Okay? Now, if you're not sure how to eliminate something, like you're like, Doc, well, you know, I like wearing deodorant because I don't like the stank, right? And you want a natural deodorant, I mean, we'll help you. There's things that you can use. I mean, this stuff is not new anymore. So there's things that work in the natural realm, and some work better for others, you know, and some different products work for different people, you know, but there's tons and tons of options now. This is not new information now. So start changing out that stuff. Drugs, there's just not much you can do about that. Drugs are drugs are drugs. They're poisons, they're chemicals, period. So unless you are in that boat where you just absolutely have to be on a drug because you were messed up so long ago that it's unfixable now, then you got to get off of them. You got to start working your way off of medications. So whatever you have to do, talk to your doctor, do whatever you have to do to get off the medications. Cleaners, body care products. Number 3, you must exercise. There's one line in the one line. Okay, now why? Exercise stimulates consumption of fat for energy when sugar stores have been depleted because you're on the aggressive diet plan. You've eliminated all the sugars. So once you've burned out all the sugar out of your system, once it's out of your bloodstream, once it's out of the cells start looking for another source of energy. What do they find? Fat. So they start burning fat for energy. That's the alternative fuel. So only at which time effective detoxification can take place. So let's read that again. Exercise stimulates consumption of fat for energy when sugar stores have been depleted, only at which time effective detoxification can take place. So until you open up the fat cells and you start dumping toxins, that's the only time that you're going to be able to detoxify. Because until you get into those fat cells, they're bound. They're not going anywhere. And as long as you're feeding in sugar, it doesn't matter if you're exercising, right? Because your body will absolutely do everything it takes to only burn the sugar that's available and hold on to those toxins for dear life because your brain and your nervous system is at stake, right? Okay, so the more the energy demand, the faster this process can occur. So if you're trying to detoxify, you've got a good, solid detoxification protocol in place. You're doing the things that are necessary. You've fulfilled deficiencies, and your body is ready to start shedding this stuff out and making it more efficient. You want to see how fast you want to get that stuff out, as quick as is safe. So going and just walking half a block around the neighborhood isn't really going to do a lot. You've got to do enough that it's actually stimulating mass rupture of fat cells, right? So that means aggressive. You've got to go at it pretty hard. Not like, you know, TV show hard. You don't have to go that hard. You don't have to go insanity, you know, but you've got to go at it, okay? And it really doesn't matter what program you use. I don't care. You see, I don't care because it's much more about what's going on under the surface than it is about what you're actually doing. Your body just likes movement. As long as you're making a muscle move, it is burning. Okay? Make sense? Okay. If you have not watched the Deficient and Deficiencies Fulfilled videos, okay? I'm telling you, if you haven't watched them, those are absolute must before you ever go out and start on a zinc supplement. I want you guys all to watch those videos before you start, before you put the first pill in your mouth, okay? Unless deficiencies are fulfilled, function cannot be reestablished. So, you know, we correlated in the studies the iodine deficiencies. You saw those go hand in hand with the zinc deficiencies. So you see, you've got to understand how all that works together. The essential fatty acids are tied in with the zinc. You know, so you've got to see how all this stuff works together, do it succinctly at the same time so that you're getting the best effect out of it as possible. Number 5, work towards correcting the zinc-copper imbalance if suspected or further test if necessary. So if you see it fit that you want to do the blood test, you know, you can, but at least do the profile, do the zinc challenge test, do these basic simple things first and just see if there's a problem. If you know you're drinking out of unfiltered copper pipes and taking showers out of unfiltered copper pipes and you've been swallowing Walmart vitamins with 5 milligrams of copper a day for the last 5 years, then I think it's safe to say that you're copper toxic. Okay? So put the dots together, be your own doctor, you know, on this level, and you know, you're probably going to come up with at least the right answer in that scenario. And then number 6, utilize an effective and safe detox aid like systemic formulas IDS. Okay? I do want to talk about this one for just a second because the way that it works, okay? Who in here has done a detox before? Okay, of some kind. Okay, a lot of us have done a detox before. Okay? Most detoxes that you see on TV and that you see sold in stores and stuff, they're basically colon cleanses. So they're designed to go in and bind up toxins in your intestines or just make you have diarrhea, and the idea is just flush it all out. The number one question I always get when people ask about this product is it going to give me diarrhea? Right? Or is it going to give me constipation? Is it going to mess up my digestion? Because that's what we've come to think of as detoxification, is if it doesn't cause me to blow out, then I'm not detoxifying properly, right? It has nothing to do with that. So proper detoxification is a systemic effect, right? It's when you're dumping toxins from your cells, not from the inside of your intestines. Your intestines is just what's in there. You got to get inside of your cells. You got to get inside your brain. You got to get in your spinal cord. You got to get inside the liver. You got to get systemically inside the body, and that is not an easy thing to do. So how do you do it? Your body's already designed to do it, right? Your body already has these processes in place. So rather than taking a bunch of products that just force purge, what do? You use a product that stimulates your immune system and that innate intelligence to start to detoxify you, right? Because it's already built in. So give it what it needs, and it will do it itself. So that's what the Systemic Formulas product is designed to do. It just gives your body what it needs to build up glutathione levels, to build up the immune system, to start naturally pulling stuff out of the cells. But then once you have it out of the cells, there's another step that you got to do, because what happens now? It goes into your liver. It gets processed again in your liver. Then it goes through the detoxification pathways, which means it gets dumped into your intestinal tract or into your urine. Once it goes in there, now it goes and it travels through your intestinal tract into your colon. And as you get to your colon, your body starts doing what? Absorbing water back in through the colon. And as it does that, you start absorbing toxins again. We call that retox. So who wants to detox just to retox? Doesn't make any sense, right? You're circulating this stuff through your system. You might as well leave it stored up in fat cells where it can't do damage, right? So you've got to have something in there to bind it up and carry it out. So the second component of it is the bind, and it's designed to do exactly that. It picks all that stuff up from the intestinal tract, holds on to it so it can be cleared out effectively. So it's it's a very intelligent detox product. It's not, I mean, this is the culmination of easily a decade of research, not just something that somebody put together for the sake of selling a product. Okay, you gotta know the difference when it comes to vitamins. Does anybody have any questions to finish up? Ruby?
You were talking about the thyroid.
Yes.
Once you go to the doctor and they put you on, say, Synthroid, you're on it for life.
That's the idea.
So what do you do to keep your thyroid levels?
That is the deficiencies workshop almost entirely. So you would need to get on and watch that. Go to YouTube and look up deficiencies. Now, when you look it up, the title of the workshop is Deficient, but it's spelled DEAF, like deaf. Okay, and it's going to auto-correct you, right? Because all computers do that. So it's going to look up deficient, and it's going to come up with a bunch of random stuff. But if you look right up at the top, it says, "Did you mean deficient?" And you click on that, yes, and it'll come up the first one.
Okay.
Okay, or you can look up my name, look up youtube.com, I think, /Dr. Bucknell, and it'll come up. Or just email me and I'll send it to you. So the bottom line is, with drug companies, they want you on drugs for life. That's the idea. They don't want you to be on a drug that cures your disease and then you get off, because there's no money in that. So when drugs are created, they're created for the purpose of keeping you locked on them, basically as a replacement for life. So knowing that's the idea, well, now you come to another conclusion. What if you can create problems, right? You've got a few people that have these problems, but what if we create a lot of people that have these problems? Wow.
I see.
You see?
Yeah.
I told them the pass to come into your place was that they had to agree to give up all the drugs over a period of time.
Yeah.
But you know one that didn't.
We just look at it a little bit different. The shackles, and that's many things. I mean, a drug is a shackle. It's chains that are designed to keep you in bondage and slavery. So Benjamin Franklin said he's the best physician who knows the worthlessness of most medicines. They're worthless. Your body knows how to take care of itself. You shouldn't need medicines from the outside.
Yeah, but what if you get a staph infection? You've got to have antibiotics.
Silver.
Pardon?
Silver. It's nature's antibiotic.
It's out there. So
But see, I don't want to just, really, I don't want to throw out just a blank statement like that, like, just do this, you got to swallow a bottle of Windex, there's people, I don't want to come across like that kind of guy. No, there's got to be wisdom behind it. There's got to be intelligence behind it. There's been cases where I've been okay with people taking antibiotics. If somebody is in for a surgery to do something and they nick your intestines, and now you end up with sepsis, you better be on antibiotics.
Right.
There's a place and a time for everything, but for most cases, probably 98% of cases, we are over-medicated.
Yeah,
We just don't need them.
Exactly. Because I have so many friends that are on blood pressure medicine. That's a lifetime thing too, just like the thyroid. So
That's the idea. That's the idea. But there's a fix for that too, and it's all the same problems. It's all the same problems.
Hypertension.
So, did you guys learn something tonight?
Yes.
Okay, you know how to finally break the bondage. Okay. Yep.
Did you ever answer your question about coffee?
Okay, coffee. So if you do a quick Google search, you'll find that there is plenty of people out there that say that coffee causes mineral deficiencies. Anybody ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay. There's plenty of people that say that. Well, I went and I started researching for research. I started looking for actual studies, and I looked for a good solid hour, just looking for actual real studies, or even looking to see if anybody actually referenced a real study. And I couldn't find it. So if somebody wants to find an actual study and send it to me, I want to look at it. But here's the thing about coffee. Number one, it's kind of like talking about beef, right? In the sense of, if you're going to do a study on beef and tell me it's unhealthy, that really doesn't tell me a whole lot, because I don't know if the cow is eating corn or if it's eating grass. I don't know if the cow is living inside of a pen with 800 other cows stacked in, poop up to their ankles, or if they're roaming around on a field out in Wilmer, I don't know these things. I don't know if they're mass-fed vaccinations and antibiotics in their feed, or if they never had a drug in their life. I don't know. So you've got to get back to, looking at what is the difference in things. And most of the studies that are out there are probably done on just regular, coffee, which absolutely is the most pesticide-laden crop in the world. Absolutely. That's why you absolutely must use organic coffee if you're going to drink coffee. You have to.
Well, when you go and you say, I want grain-fed beef, okay, like you preach.
Grass-fed beef.
Grass-fed, okay.
But I know that's what you meant.
Well, I know that's what, what I mean.
Yes.
Okay. How you sure you're getting that?
You got to know the farms.
Yeah.
You've got to know the farms. That's why we use Hastings Farm. They're local. I visited the farm. I've literally shoveled manure off of their lawn to put in my garden. I mean, I know the place. I've actually been out there. I've visited. I've talked to the owner. I know he doesn't cut corners. So that's the way it's got to be. It's got to be local. When you're buying stuff from a typical grocery store, you might be getting parts from 800 different head of cattle, all mixed into 1 pound package. And I learned this from Mr. Hastings, that they can add something like 12% water to the product. So they inject water into it and fluff it up to sell it at a higher weight, but it's 12% water. So you're paying for nothing. When you put it in your pan, it shrinks down tremendously. It's unbelievable.
I understand they decaffeinate coffee beans by bleaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
what gives you your decaf.
Yes, they use a lot of chemicals. There is a natural process, though. That's what we use next door,
I didn't know
called
that.
Swiss water process. Yeah.
Sorry, Ruby.
Yeah, they use. They're actually very, very toxic chemicals
Yeah.
used to decaf coffee. And the natural process, though, is called Swiss water process. And you can look it up. You can research about it, but it's safe. They don't use any chemicals at all. It's just a filter that catches the caffeine, but keeps the bean super saturated with everything else. So anyways, getting back to that question, I haven't found anything that shows that that coffee depletes zinc in your system or any other minerals. But even if it does, you see, if you're consuming regular amounts of vegetables and fruits and everything, and you're taking good quality supplement, it ain't gonna matter. Your coffee isn't gonna do enough to make a difference. And there are plenty more health benefits of coffee that have been shown all over the research, that it's, even with considering that it causes mineral deficiencies, it still is weighing in favor of drinking it versus not drinking it. The antioxidant loads are unreal. They're out of this world.
Refresh my memory. The purpose of that sampling, what do you accomplish by doing that?
What the Zinc Challenge does, it's basically a taste test,
Oh, taste
where your
test,
body
okay.
will tell you
Do you want us
subjectively.
to pass it out to people?
They can do it when they come up.
Okay,
If,
well, I'm gonna give them all a sheet.
okay.
that explains to
Yeah,
them
it
what
explains exactly how it does it, and so like I said, it is somewhat subjective. Like sometimes you're not really sure one way or the other, but some people may be a definite, and that's what you're looking
So
for.
it's either going to be tasting good or bad?
Yes, or not. Well, it tastes bad or nothing at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like drinking water.
yeah, you got it.
Yeah,
Just
okay,
like a
just like the
plain
silver
nothing
bottles
taste.
that you got out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
you're deficient,
So if it
what
tastes, if it tastes like water,
It just tastes
there's
like
no
water.
taste. That
What
means
kind of
that you're
reaction
okay.
would you have?
That's on this sheet right there. It tells you exactly. Yeah, and you want to know that. You want to know what you're looking for before you take it, so that you know what you're trying to perceive.
Right.
What did you say you should take if you don't have a gallbladder?
Well,
And do you feel like you really need to do it if you've been doing okay for a number of
See,
years?
because it doesn't taste like
and it does, obviously it does depend on your diet, right? Because if you're not eating mass quantities of abnormal fats at one time, then you're probably not
Bring me one.
overwhelming the system,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So it does depend on what you're eating in your diet, but if you are gonna eat fats, which are necessary, they're absolutely necessary, then it's a good idea to take ox bile with your meals, which is, I believe, in the Digest formula. If any of you guys are taking that, we told you to take that for digestive issues. It's got the ox bile in there.
You know what they call a cow that just had a calf?
What do you call a cow that just had a calf?
Decaf.
A
Decaf. Nice.
I have one at my farm.
Okay. On that note, if you guys have any other questions, just see me afterwards. But I hope you guys learned something tonight. Again, I want to urge one more time, guys, don't just go and start buying random supplements and stuff. I mean, really, realistically, unless it's something, and I'm not trying to be a control freak on this matter whatsoever. You understand, this is just about protecting you guys and what you're taking, because every week I'm going through somebody's supplements and pointing out to them all the garbage that's in their supplements because they bought it from the health food store, they bought it from Walmart or something like that. Some of you guys have probably sat down and gone through this stuff with me. And I point out to you how you're overdosing in random things and getting, all kinds of additives and everything else. So if you got it here, like if I told you to take something, you're good. I've already checked it out. But if you're taking other stuff, bring it in and let me look at it. If you're thinking about buying something from somewhere else, talk to me about it before you spend your money on it, before we have to go back and tell you why not to take it. Because most likely at the end of the day, you're doing it just to save money. Where when you're talking about that level of it, between not paying sales tax because it's prescribed and getting 15% discounts because you purchase things at a workshop, there's really no way you're getting the same quality cheaper even online. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So talk to me about stuff and let's figure out what we can do within your budget to make sure that you're getting the right stuff. Okay? Use your resources, in other words. Okay? All right. Have a good night.